What's up? The NBA playoffs are in full swing and we are back. That's right. Second time in 4 days. Brand new edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein, and as always, I'm joined by a man who in the last week has been overseas, declared for the NBA draft, all while playing in an NBA postseason game. This man can do it all. That's my partner and dear friend, Ben McDonald. Ben, first, welcome home. Second, I don't know how you pulled all that off.
I'm happy to be back in the great US of A, and it just feels good to be back on this podcast. I was missing you last week, buddy. I said to you before the show, but last Tuesday just felt strange not having the Baseline Jumper in my life. So I'm glad we've kind of rectified that, and now we're back to the way it should be, which is recording our wonderful podcast for our wonderful fans and watching some NBA basketball.
That's right, Ben. The playoffs are in full swing. Now, last week, had we done the show on Tuesday, we would have had a ton of breaking news to deal with, especially the Magic Johnson news. We covered that on episode 71. This is episode 72. We are right here, full swing, NBA playoffs. We are in the thick of the first round. And, of course, some breaking news coming out of Golden State today. DeMarcus Cousins out for the remainder of the postseason, torn left quad. Suffered that during game 2, which is a story in and of itself. But first, let's focus on DeMarcus Cousins because this is a devastating blow to the Warriors. I know they've won 3 championships in 4 years without him, and he was just kind of that extra complimentary piece, a guy that could explode. But still, first of all, as a player, you just have to feel for him. And second of all, I mean, what does that do for team morale after they blew the largest lead in NBA postseason history to the Clippers last night?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing.
Don't cry. It's okay.
You can call me Steph Curry because it's time for a quick heat check here, Jason. I think that the Golden State Warriors are going to be better off without DeMarcus Cousins. I know this is a little bit of a hot take of sorts, but I just don't think he added much to their team at this stage. And the reason I say that is he's really more of an offensive first player. He can really only play the center position. And Jason, as I'm sure you remember from last year, there are 2 other players on this roster who play pretty well at the center position for the Warriors when they go small. And that, of course, is Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. And by virtue of him not being on the roster, this also opens them up to use their lineups of death that they've become so familiar with. That's going to get Sean Livingston, Quinn Cook some more minutes. It's going to let them play Andre Iguodala in. It's going to let them go small. I actually, in some ways, I actually think Bogut and Bell and Looney are actually better fits in some ways on this particular team just because they really don't need the scoring that Cousins brings. They really need the defense. And while they blew a big lead, I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to easily take care of the Clippers. And I think that DeMarcus Cousins' injury is going to be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for them because I think it's going to take them back to kind of the team that they succeed as, which is a defensive team who happens to have 2 of the best offensive players in the league. And I think that's going to make them into the juggernaut that we're used to. I actually had started to get a teeny bit worried about this team because Cousins was just a sieve defensively. And you can have one guy like Curry who's not a great defender. When you put a second one out there, Jason, it starts causing a lot of problems because you just can't plug all the leaks. If they want to hunt Curry, you can try and hunt Curry on the mismatch, and they did some of that yesterday when the Clippers came back. But the truth is that they have to look for that matchup all the time, and Curry can really hurt them on the other end. Cousins just wasn't delivering enough on offense to really outweigh his defensive shortcomings this year, and I think that was going to become a little bit of a problem. So I think ultimately, in some ways, Jason, this could be a blessing in disguise.
Ben, I just want to tell you, buddy, you are a consummate professional. This man lands back home in America less than 36 hours ago and started our podcast with his heat check. I don't know how I can top that. But playoffs aside for a second, you have to feel for DeMarcus Cousins as a human. I mean, you knew the writing's on the wall, most likely not coming back to Golden State. Still could get a ring, even though he won't be playing in the NBA Finals should the Warriors make it that far. But still, who's going to pay him? I know we have all summer to talk about this, but will the Lakers get desperate and max him out and bring him in to play next to LeBron James if they don't get Anthony Davis? I mean, who knows where Cousins is going to end up now? He may be rehabbing into training camp. We don't know how severe this quad injury is, a torn quad. I mean, he could be out a
Yeah.
few months. So that's a scary scenario. And then the Warriors, I mean, blowing a 31-point lead. They were up 31 with 7.5 to go in the third quarter, and the wheels just came off. Lou Williams hit some shots, went from 31 down to 14. And you saw it in that arena. The arena went silent. And that's a very demoralizing loss, even for the back-to-back defending champs. Don't you think? I know I'm overreacting. They'll probably beat the Clippers with ease. They could win the next three. But still, I mean, they let the Clippers with nothing to play for. The pressure is all on Golden State. And for them to just take their foot off the gas up 31 points, I mean, that's not what championship teams do, Ben.
This is true. I do want to just say, I feel like there is a very natural place for Cousins to end up, Jason, and that is in one Dallas Mavericks uniform. He just strikes me as a very Mavericks-like player. I feel like that's a nice fit for them. I feel like that gives them a little bit of Kristaps Porzingis insurance. I'm not sure you want to necessarily play those guys together, but they definitely need another big man. They're one of the few teams that does, and it just feels like a Mavericks type guy. Feels like someone that they'd go after. But you're right. There is something here with blowing the lead. But honestly, Jason, I couldn't be less worried about it. I think that the Warriors are far and away the best team. They still have two of the top 5 players probably in the league. They've still got 2 of the best shooters of all time, if not 3. Andre Iguodala has not played great, but he's still got something left in the tank. I think he's going to turn it on. Same thing with Draymond Green. I just feel like the talent is overwhelming, particularly for a Clippers team that basically traded away their best player in Tobias Harris. So to me, there's no reason to panic in Warrior land.
Well, we are doing the Clippers a huge disservice if we're focusing on the Warriors blowing this lead. How about the Clippers for coming back? I mean, they were down 31 points. Ben, this team wasn't supposed to make the playoffs. They traded Tobias Harris and Marjanovic. Did I say that right? Boban Marjanovic. Help me out here.
Marjanovic?
No. Marjanovic, thank you. And I heard his name about 75 times over the last 4 days. But they trade those two guys, and they still make the playoffs in the West. I mean, they basically took the Lakers' playoff spot, if you look at it. They're the 8th seed. They have nothing to play for, and they came back from 31 points down. Most teams would have just mailed it in, not the Clippers. I know it probably won't mean much in the long term, but we have to give the Clippers their credit where credit is due. Now the series shifts back to L.A. The Clippers have home court advantage. Like I said, I don't think they'll do anything with it, but let's just give them their props here tonight for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think that they do deserve a lot of credit. We're going to get to the other game from last night in a little bit. But first, Jason, of course, it's a formality, but Zion Williamson has declared for the NBA draft. He is the presumptive number 1 pick. And along with him, a few other guys also declared in University of Virginia's Kyle Guy. Kentucky's hero is going to be in the draft as well. We'll see who else declares, but ultimately, Jason, I mean, I think this was a foregone conclusion. We knew that Zion was going to declare. He's going to be the number 1 pick. And now it's just going to be interesting to see how the lottery balls kind of fall and where he ends up because, Jason, whichever team he goes to, I think is going to get one heck of a player. And he could be a franchise-type player, I think. So I'm fascinated to see where he ends up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Knicks fans who listen to this podcast want it to be New York. It'll be most likely between the Cavs, the Suns, and your New York Knicks. Not yours, Ben, the people listening to the show. But, I mean, I'd be surprised if another team kind of fell into that top 3, but it looks like you'll be wearing one of those jerseys. I know you want to see if the Bulls can potentially pull it off. Did you see the way that Zion declared that whole big video about how this was the best year of his life and wants to thank God and then Coach K and then his teammates, a lot of that. You start to see that today with kids just determining where they're even going to college. And now, a few $1,000 video that it probably costs to shoot and edit that to announce that he's going into the draft. I mean, it's insane. what these kids are doing these days.
And you know what else is the one thing I think is kind of cool here though, Jason, is that when you really look, this was a team and the Duke team that really did look like they really had fun. I mean, you got to give them a little bit of credit. It seems um, like they're just having a great time. To be honest, it seems like they are just really, really enjoying the time there, and I think it's a credit to Coach K in the way that he's done this. But don't cry for Duke; they'll get some more prospects, and meanwhile Zion's gonna be making millions. So a lot to like there. But Jason, before we go any further, I feel like there's another piece of news that we need to hit. That we talked about half of it on our last episode, and today we kind of close the loop, which is, of course, the Lakers fire Luke Walton. Meanwhile, the Kings fire Dave Yeager. Neither one of us thought the way that they treated Dave Yeager was particularly admirable. But now, Jason, there is a new coach of the Sacramento Kings.
Yes, and Game of Thrones is finally solved because we now know that Luke Walton will be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end of season 8. Luke Walton is the king of Sacramento. Sacramentoros.
I like the little dad joke in there, the king of Sacramento. Very nice. Enjoyed that.
Yes. Yes. No, but in all seriousness, we'll get to Luke Walton in a second. What'd you think of Game of Thrones without spoiling anything to our non-Game of Thrones fan listeners?
Well, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but I always love when they have a more personal episodes, and I thought that was fantastic. This was a great first episode. It felt like I read a great article on The Ringer about this, and it is one of my favorite things. It's a show that actually has real consequences, or at least it used to until the last couple seasons. I felt like this first episode we're seeing some of those consequences come to light. It feels like we're going to have some interesting tension between Danny and John potentially, so I'm excited for that. How about you, Jason?
I loved it. I think it was a great setup episode for the probably action-packed final 5 episodes. But that's all I'll say. I just wanted to tie in the fact that now I know Luke Walton wins the throne. He survives the Whites. He survives the war. He was hiding in Lannister armor this entire time, and he just comes and takes the throne. But in all seriousness, I think this was a great hire by the Kings, and this is my heat check of the week, by the way, and then we're going to get all playoffs the rest of the way here. But I think the Kings will appreciate Luke Walton the way the Lakers could not, because there's no pressure on Sacramento. They were an up-and-coming team, and I said on last week's show that we recorded just a few days ago that the Kings may take a step back because you have guys like Hield and Fox and Cauley Stein and Bogdanovich, all these young players that grew and blossomed under Yeager. But I think Luke Walton is the perfect guy. 98 wins in 3 years as head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Didn't make the playoffs, but he's inheriting a team that is not that far away. I know they don't have a draft pick this year, but they're a team on the rise. They may be able to sneak in and sign a free agent or two. I would not be surprised if they can try at least get a meeting with a guy like Tobias Harris. I think he would fit perfectly next to Hield and De'Aaron Fox, but we'll get to free agency, of course, in a couple of months. But Walton's coming in. He's got a great relationship with Vlade Divac because they have that Lakers connection. He's going to have a longer leash than Yeager did. And I think the Kings are just going to appreciate his X's and O's. There's no LeBron James there kind of casting a shadow. There's no trade talks of disgruntled superstars wanting to come there, messing with the psyche of the young guys. Anthony Davis is not going to request a trade to the Kings and have De'Aaron Fox sitting there sweating it out. Do you know what I mean? So I think Walton's going to a much lower pressure of a situation. Again, every time we do the show, I can't speak, but the point is there's a lot less pressure on Walton, and I think he'll flourish in Sacramento.
Yeah, I really like the move. I really, really feel like Luke Walton is still an interesting coach who I think has some good principles, and I think he's a great fit for the Sacramento team, Jason. I really think that was a nice move, and as much as I wouldn't mind them getting Harris, I actually think that they should sit pat a little bit here and really let these guys grow and then try to find a piece. Try to get some young guys in here who are going to grow with them. Don't rush it. I mean, this is a team that has a lot of talent, and I just don't think you need to try and win right now. I think it's time to let these guys grow. Try to get some young guys who complement them, and then from there, just see what you end up with. Because at this